You're listening to the Live Free podcast. I'm your host, Christine, author, speaker, mentor, and guide. I'm here today to discuss living life after adversity, to discuss living life fully once again, a life of hope, peace, and resiliency, a life fully embodied. I utilize the lessons that I learned going through not one, but two primary cancers. I'm here today to guide you to your joy, turn your pain into power, and lead you back to yourself. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Live Free podcast. Today we have Angela Gehl on the podcast. Angela Gehl is a world-renowned intuitive, medium, profiler, mother, business owner, neurological psychologist, friend, and more. You're going to love this episode with Angela today. We are going to talk very little about business, and we're going to talk more about the internal. And we all know that what we're searching for in life is internal happiness. We chase all these outside things in order to get this internal feeling of joy. And we're going to talk a little bit about how Angela started with the success and found out that the joy was truly what she was searching for. And so I'm really looking forward to this episode. I think you're going to absolutely love it. I know I felt show-stopped when I listened to it, and I listened to it a couple of times since then. So enjoy, and let's get started. All right. Hello, Angela. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited about this conversation. I know you have a really powerful story to talk about. So let's start first with where in the world are you calling from?
I am in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and I have been here since 2010.
Amazing. Okay. Well, I know that your background is extraordinary. In the introduction, I mentioned that, you're a medium, you do all of this amazing work. You have been so instrumental in my life. So I'm super honored to have you on the podcast, to be honest. And whenever there's something like blowing up, I'm like, Angela, help me out here. So thank you so much for that. But let's talk about what blew up in your life. What brought you to this extraordinary woman that you are today?
Well, thank you, first of all, for giving me that nice little shout out. I had a different career, and I never, ever thought that I would do what I'm doing today. Never in a million years. I got separated and divorced, and that started in 2010. And I needed to figure out my life in a fast way, being a single mom with 3 little kids, moving to a new city where I didn't know anybody, and I didn't have really a skill set that was conducive to raising kids on my own. And so I had to do a fallback on what can I do with the skills that I have, I just happened to have a nice little party trick that was connecting with spirit and knowing what's going to happen in people's lives, and it blossomed into a career. It's been a huge learning curve, and every time I work with somebody, I learn more about myself, and I actually heal a little part of myself every time I have a session with somebody else. So, yeah, I'm doing it just as much for me as I do it for my clients like you.
Extraordinary. I think that the things that set us free do mutually benefit ourselves and other people, because I think that you're in this more expansive place. And so, you're able to readily help people because you're not pouring from an empty cup. You're being filled as you pour. And I think that that's perfect way to have, your cake and eat it too.
A little bit, yeah. Bumps along the way, but here we are, still standing.
Of course. Yes, absolutely. And so, so in 2010, what were some of the things that you were going through?
Well, I thought that it's funny. 2010, I thought I had hit my rock bottom. I had not hit my rock bottom. It was a bounce along the way to rock bottom. I actually didn't hit my rock bottom until 2021.
Wow. It's a long bounce.
It was a very long bounce. When I got separated, I did not have my family's support in that. And I was basically told I was a failure. I knew I was a failure. My entire 20s. And so in 2010, I turned 30. So just kind of, but my entire 20s, I was not even known. I didn't even have a name. So I was my kid's mom. I was the doctor's wife. I was this, I was that, but I didn't. My brother had a TV show, and he was doing really well at the time. So I was his sister. My dad is a very well-known scientist. I was his daughter. I was everybody but myself. And then I was told I was a failure, and I knew I was a failure. I had failed at being a wife. I now am not giving my kids the stable home that I wanted. Failed as a parent. I've just failed at everything that I thought I should be. And then I get thrown into this about okay, well, what can I do? Well, I can't really do anything. I guess I'm just a failure. Totally. And that carried with me for so long that building my career and doing this, the drive that I had to succeed was based on the fact that I was trying to prove everybody wrong, that I wasn't a failure at life.
Wow. That's a big realization in the middle of a huge internal crisis of I'm not enough.
And that's been a theme with me my whole life.
Gotcha.
Which is crazy because on the outside looking in, and anybody who knows me, it's I always had and still do the perfect Christmas cards. I have the tree that is perfectly decorated with the presents that match, and my kids are perfect, and my life is perfect, and everything is wonderful, and I always look a certain way. I volunteer with all the things. I've got this great career that seems very mysterious and exotic, and everybody loves you and all this type of stuff. And it's I was dying on the inside and I was drowning, and I thought I was a failure and I was not coping, but you would never know it by looking at me, because I had this thing where I had to be a certain way to prove to everybody that I wasn't what I felt I was.
Right. And I wonder if that's what fueled this consistent effort to have the perfect decorations and the career, and to get to this point was this constant but if I make it, I'll be worth it.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
I identify with that.
Oh yeah.
I get it.
To prove to myself, but to prove to everybody else too, that I was okay, and that I was worthy, and that it was still good and everything.
Yeah.
But then, not that I ever bought into that hype, and I still don't buy into any sort of hype, and I've got a lot of recognition and things have been good and whatever. I'm still I'm so hypercritical of myself that it's wild. But it wasn't until 2021 where all of that totally just fell apart and in an instant. And I had to figure out who I was, what I was, and am I okay with me? When I hit rock bottom, I had to sit there and be like, I don't even know who I am. If I peel away every label that I've had, and to be able to sit with myself and be okay.
Right.
And that's been work. It's been worth it, but like, it's been hard. Yeah.
What did that rock bottom look like, if you don't mind my asking, if it's an appropriate question? You know, what triggered it? What was the straw for you in that moment?
Well, one of my kids had a mental health crisis. They've spoken about it. I won't name who it is, but one of them did. And it was a very significant mental health crisis where their life was not guaranteed. I'll just gloss that over and say that. It ended up being kind of a public thing, which was horrible. And some of it was taped on Snapchat and it went viral and just, it was horrible. It was a horrible, horrible experience. And I thought everything was okay with my kids and I was doing a good job and I was trying to balance everything. And I'd almost bought into this where, okay, I'm not a failure. I'm not the loser that, you know, I thought I was or whatever. And some of my family and whatever, I've had to like block on social media and stuff because they've been so cruel. Like I could never do anything right, but that's a whole nother podcast too. But when this happened, it would slap me in the face that I was still a failure.
Right.
And it didn't matter how many vacations I could take my kids on, how perfect everything looked. And even though if you ask them, it really had nothing to do with me, I took it all on as my own as, oh my God, I failed my kids in the biggest way. Right. And I completely, unequivocally fell apart, which just had this series of this chain reaction in my life where almost everything fell apart for me. And I had to really reprioritize what was even important.
Right.
And it was lots of hard lessons, lots. So yeah, it was literally the worst time of my life. And I'm not saying that because my child put me under stress or anything like that. Nothing like that at all. But it was the fallout from that.
Of course. I think that, mom, when you hear the word mom guilt, that goes so much deeper than, a fun little saying. There's so much that identity that comes with, how your children are doing.
Well, and it's not only that, but like I had been going back to school. I was in grad school at that time. And, I had these other kids that I still had to look after. And I had 2 businesses that I was running. And I still was doing all of that. And, trying to be everything for everyone. And then I couldn't be anything for anyone. And realizing how humbling that was.
Right.
And just realizing the absolute amount of pressure that other people had put on me and that I had put on myself, but because I knew I've always put lots of pressure on myself, but realizing how much other people saw me in a certain way and that their expectations of who I was did not match me, and aggressive fallout from that and having to deal with that and be okay with that.
Wow. Talk about a decade later, all of the fears that you had just rearing their ugly head.
Yes.
And even coming from external sources again, like that's awful.
But, and I'm sure going through what you went through, you can relate to this too. If you put on a brave face and if you're always smiling and everything's good, people will you could be going through whatever. Like, I never let anyone know that I had taken on so much stuff trying to prove to myself that I wasn't a failure and that I would be enough, if only, that I was literally drowning. I was literally drowning. I would go home every day for years, like a decade, and sit in my bathtub and cry, thinking that if I had the water running, my kids wouldn't hear me.
Right.
But as long as everybody thought I was good, then I was good. And I've shown people that I'm good, even though I 100% wasn't good, but I was like lying to myself. Even if you ask my kids now, they'd be like, oh yeah, mom in the tub means she's crying. We could hear her.
Oh,
but I didn't know that. They never said that to me, until now. They kind of joke about it, and I don't even feel bad about that. It is what it is. Everybody cries, and they should. If you don't, you should. But I often wondered, like, do people not realize I'm drowning?
right.
And then people would ask, oh, how are you? And it'd be like, oh, life's really busy. Oh my God, you're Superwoman. You're Wonder Woman. You got this. You're awesome. Okay, well, Superwoman and Wonder Woman are fictional characters that don't exist. They have superhuman powers to do things that humans can't do.
Mm-hmm.
I am not Superwoman. I am not Wonder Woman. I am not none of those things. I'm drowning. But now that you put that on me and then follow up with that, oh my God, you got this. You're good. You can't ask for help.
No. Yeah.
And then they proceed to ask you for something else, and that just piles it on to the point where you're going to break. One little hair can break you, and mine was a huge thing. But then you have all these expectations that you're the superhuman and superpower, especially with my job. And I took some time off. I had 3 people reach out to me, and I had taken a few months off because our family crisis was extended. I had 3 people reach out to me only to be like, I hope you're okay. I hope your family's okay.
Right.
I had clients tell me that I was terrible. How dare I take time off? They've been waiting for a long time for this. The rude letters that I got and messages, like, how dare I? To the point where I would have a panic attack thinking about opening my Facebook business page to see what type of horrendous things would be sent to me when my world was falling apart. I wouldn't even answer my phone or look at my text messages because it would be just a bunch of hate. I had somebody, I couldn't get to what they want. I couldn't be what they wanted me to be. And she literally sent 5 of her friends after me. And her thing was she was going to ruin my life.
Thanks. It's pretty bad already, but I appreciate it.
It was like in Google reviews, and they were completely false and whatever. And it was just like, are you serious? So not only could I not be human, because I'm not allowed to be human to myself or anybody else, because I created this monster.
Right.
But like 0 support. 0. And so the only person that I had to support me was me.
Okay. And so what came out of that?
Well, funny you ask. I really had to strip away every single label that I had ever created for myself. Of being the swim mom, the football mom, the so-and-so's mom, the this, the that, the volunteer, the business owner, all of these types of things. And it was like, what can I do for myself that will make me happy?
Might have been the first time you asked yourself that question.
I had no clue who I was.
Right.
None. And I thought, first of all, I was going to take myself out on a date. And I was like, okay, well, where am I going to go for dinner? Well, we usually go here because the kids like this. I didn't even know where I wanted to go for dinner.
Right.
And it was like, okay, but then I also need to go somewhere where nobody will know who I am so that they don't come over and want me just to like read them on the fly, which drives me crazy. Anyone, podcast people who are listening, please don't do that to me. And,
Totally fair. And you have an extraordinary skill, but absolutely it is just not one of those things that you do.
No. But, and it was sort of like, okay, well, what can I do for myself? What would I even like? And just started to slowly kind of learn who I was as a person. Pick up a book that wasn't a textbook. Watch a movie that my kids didn't want to watch, but that I actually wanted to watch. All of these kind of things. And I know that sounds really silly, but when you don't know who you are and everybody's expectations of you are based on something that isn't you, you have to start at silly things. And those silly things take time. And so it's just allowing yourself to take that time for yourself. And fine, I could say, oh, don't feel guilty about it. You're going to feel guilty about it. But just know that guilt's a part of life. And would you rather be on the floor, a mess, and not being able to string a sentence together, or have some guilt knowing that you took some time for yourself? Pick your battle. I'd rather and if people
Simple.
and if people were mad at me or whatever, you know what, they're going to be mad at me regardless. And a lot of people will come in and see me and be like, oh, so-and-so referred me and they said the session with you changed my life. Well, that's cool. That's a lot of pressure on me.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I'm going to change your life or not, but we'll do our best. But at the end of the day, I shouldn't have that much control over somebody else's life, and they shouldn't have that much control over that much pressure on me. And so it is what it is. And if they're happy, great. And if they're not,
it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And just learning who I was and being okay with the fact that I might fail at things like everybody else. Other people get divorced. Other people are single parents. Other people's kids have crisis. Why is that okay for them, but it's not okay for me?
Right. Well, and I love the idea of, they talk about how like mirror neurons, in the science, based way, or the law of attraction in the ethereal way, that the world that you bring in is the world that you internally have. And it's sounding to me, listening to this story, that you had put yourself on such a high, like, I need to be perfect, that the world needed you to be perfect. And so then these first moments when you're saying to yourself, like, what do I want to watch? What if my client isn't happy? Those are big, really reflective questions that would have felt very foreign at the time, but that are going to start to change that internal world so that the external world can start to say, like, hey, I'm not perfect, and that's okay. And also step off if you're interested in perfect. Also that.
Exactly. And it's a lonely place not being a real person.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not consider myself like a celebrity by any stretch of the imagination. But when people say that, well, those people in the public eye. They signed up for that when people are so cruel and so mean and so whatever. It's like, yeah, they might have, but you have no clue how isolating. And this is just me on like the grain of salt in an hourglass scale. Like, this is not like anything, but it's so isolating and lonely. And yeah, that I don't think people realize. And they don't realize that you can have off days or a bad mood, or maybe you don't feel good, or a sick day, or God forbid you're not smiling when they see you, or whatever, you know? And like, I'm okay with looking like a homeless person. Like I really don't care if people see me like that, because I'm a real person. And being okay with that is great, you know. Wrestling with the fact that I failed my clients if I have to rebook a session, like I don't even care anymore, because if I'm not okay, it's got to wait until I'm okay so that I can help them be okay. But like, let's work on me first, because if I'm not good, nobody's good.
Well, I love the conviction there. Now I'm curious, in these beginning stages of asking myself, what kind of movies do I want to watch, to now where you're like, hey, you know what? I'm having an off day and we are going to have to rebook. Where was that transition? When did you start to feel like really rooted in yourself? Like what tools did you learn? What realizations did you have? What were some of the moments when you were just like, you know what, screw this. Like, I think I'm just going to be me, and that's going to be perfect as she is.
Okay, so my kid in crisis, go back to that. They're back at home, whatever, and we're having this open dialogue. And they had said to me, do you know how much pressure it is when your dad's a doctor? My two older kids are both like elite athletes, and the pressure to be an athlete and pressure whatever. And then you've got a perfect mom. And all of my friends say you're perfect. And this and that, whatever. Do you know how much pressure that is? I can't live up to that. And and I'm like, oh my God, I failed you. No, Mom, you've always been the perfect mom. But you know what that's like? Because I'm not perfect, and both my parents seem perfect, and they're, you know, I'm a failure. And I literally was like,
oh my goodness.
Time to get messy. Let us accept that nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
Let's get a little messy and a little ugly and a little whatever. And we're going to take our time, and we're going to be good with who we are when we're at. And so I forced myself to go there for the sake of my kids.
Wow. What, like, literal chills. What a full circle moment. So you're just like, you're trying to perfect your way into feeling enough. And then I'm not perfect enough. And I'm going to need to perfect my way to the top. And then you're just like, oh my God, like, what a huge moment. Yeah. And then to find the courage to say, like, I'm going to let my house get dusty because I cannot do this.
That to the extreme. No, I'm just kidding. But, you know, and it was that. It was like, okay, you know what? We're not perfect. This is good. I think my kids are perfect just the way they are. I think they're wonderful. I don't have rose-colored glasses. They really are good humans. They really, really are. And they're not perfect. I'm not trying to make them perfect. And I'm not perfect. I might yell every once in a while, tell some inappropriate jokes, do whatever. But here we are. It was just like, you know, if I'm not expecting them to be like this, so I can't be like this, because me being this much pressure on myself is setting the tone for them to feel less than. And all I was trying to do was feel okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and going through all of that, just being okay with not being okay doesn't mean that I had to be a mess or go on and my soapbox and tell my story. Actually, this is the first time I've ever talked about it, ever.
Well,
And I
thank
don't
you
know
for
if I'll
being so raw.
well, and I don't know if I'll like continue talking about this. It might be a once and done. I don't know. But it was just like, it's okay to not be okay, because nobody's okay all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I can definitely say before that crisis, I had put so much pressure on myself that I literally used to fantasize about killing myself so I could get out from the pressure.
Right. It's a lot to take on.
And I'm not depressed. I've never been depressed. I don't have depression. Anxiety for sure. Social anxiety for sure. Mainly because people look at me and they're like, it's her. Or it's like, oh my God, I have to perform and be on or whatever, or stuff. Like I have social anxiety for other reasons, but never depression. But I was fixated on, if I could die, then I wouldn't have to live up to all of this.
Okay.
And I can honestly say that since all of this went down with my kids in our family crisis and realizing that I wasn't the only person that was like, this is too much, all of us are a whole lot happier in the house. All of us. And there's way more laughter. We went through a period where there was no laughter in the house going through all of this. And it was like, I couldn't sleep. I was worried something was going to happen. I would, check to make sure everybody was breathing, and just like, like you go through those panic stages and whatever. But now it's like, there's so much joy because it's just humans and we're having fun and enjoying the human experience. And that is not a perfection or anything. It's just real and it's joyful, and you can be present and be happy.
Right. And it can be messy and beautiful and all of those things.
Yes. And a lot of people still have those external expectations of, oh, this or that or whatever. But anybody, to me now, I have such a small circle. It's really just my kids and like 2 other people. You can be my friend. I like you. Like anybody who kind of put any of that stuff on me or wouldn't take the time to be like, hey, are you okay? They have no room in my life. None. And that's okay.
And because that is okay.
Yeah, because I want to be able to be me and not be Superwoman, Wonder Woman, whatever. And I just want real friends that are messy, and I can be messy and fun and be good, because you only get a short amount of time in your life. And why are you going to waste it being unhappy?
Mm-hmm. The visualization that I get is I can see these like 2 walls closing in, and they're getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And then finally you're just like, enough. Like that's what it feels like to me, is that this crushing pressure hit a peak, and then you were just like I'm just going to get out of this hole. Like I'm not going to live here anymore.
No, because I couldn't.
Right.
I couldn't. You can only drown for so long before you literally drown and sink to the bottom, or you move and change and get out of that danger zone.
So how does it feel now? Like when you're moving through life and there's messiness and all the things, does it still bother you? Is it difficult to not like find perfection, or has it come naturally?
No, it did not come naturally. And like I said, that was 2021. It's 2024. So it took a good like 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was March 12th of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be burnt into my brain forever, to now where it's like, I feel good about it now, but it takes years. And when you fall back into the shoulda, coulda, woulda, oh my gosh, I can do more or whatever, you have to stop yourself.
Yeah.
And be like, no, like, what am I doing? Because it's a new habit, right? And so habits take a while to form, just like going to the gym or doing whatever. Like, you're going to have off days and slip ups and whatever, but it takes a while to change. Nothing is overnight. You know, people say, oh, people were an overnight success. No, they weren't.
No, they weren't.
You just noticed them, you know, and
Yeah.
even people like with my career and whatever, oh my gosh, like, I want your career. Do you really? Because if you saw what it took for me to build what I've got, you would say, heck no.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want my life. I don't want your life. You don't want to know the blood, sweat, and tears that it took to get where I am. And like, I'm enjoying the fruits of my labor, but I would never do it again, because I'd want to actually be happy for that decade.
Yeah. Sure.
Like, genuinely happy, instead of the fake happy trying to make everybody else think that I'm good enough.
Wow. Totally fair.
So
I love this story because what it really stands for to me is, number one, a mirror, because like, I'm like, ooh, girl, I'm like, I could follow in the footsteps of Angela. Number one. But the second one is, what I really love about it is that, you know, often a lot of the podcasts that I do, we talk about, and you do have this level of success. We talk about how, you know, you've gone through something and then you made something big out of it. And although you have done that, what we're talking about in this instance is that you've gone through something and you found some space and some bigness in you, you know, and I think that that's so much more of a reward than, you know, standing on that stage or having, you know, this really successful business that you have or whatever it is that what it really comes down to is that what we're all searching for is joy. And in this instance, your rags to riches is your riches are internal. And I just love that. And I think it's such an important thing for us to talk about, because, you know, I'm cognizant of, I've had so many wonderful interviews, but I'm cognizant of the fact that a listener might start to feel like, you know, these bad things that I went through, I need to turn them into something powerful, because that's who Christine interviews, for example, you know, and I think that it's so much more important to highlight the fact that what we're really searching for is exactly what we're talking about today, and which is this internal space, this internal joy.
Absolutely. A lot of people say, like, exactly what you said. You have to turn it into something. You have to capitalize on it. You end up being like, you know, profiting from it or whatever. And you can, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's great. But not everybody's going to do that. But to me, success for me is being able to sit in my living room with no TV on, no nothing, whatever, and just be good with me.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that brought me the most joy, and like, I have had a ton of success in my life. I've gotten a bunch of degrees. I've done, you know, I've flown airplanes. I've done all this stuff. Like, I've had a really crazy life, but literally the pinnacle of my success, not even joking, was this year. I was celebrating my work anniversary, and I came home and the kids had got me a little present or whatever. And my daughter had written me in a card saying that I am not only a badass businesswoman and mom and everything, but that I'm a role model of what you can do, that if you put your mind to anything, you can achieve anything. And it was like, you know, when we went from where we were to that's the biggest success in my life.
Yeah.
And that my kids were all at the table with me and we were laughing and joking and they gave me hugs and everyone was genuinely happy. That's the biggest success that I've ever had in my life that day.
That's beautiful.
And
That is so beautiful.
yeah.
And and you're truly being modest. Like, the level of success that I have seen and the different things that you have done are extraordinarily high. But I love that you had the success first and then came to the realization that that's not what fulfills a human being.
Yeah. And like, I'll keep that card forever, and it was just like, yeah, that to me was more successful than anything I've ever done ever. And just the joy in the house at the time, that to me was success. I was not a failure. I got it. And we did it on my own. Wow, we did it.
Yes.
We did it as a family, but it was like, and I did it. No matter what anybody says, nobody can take that day away from me ever. And I'll cling to that.
So cool. I love it.
Yeah.
So if you could look back and tell Angela in 2011, what, how to get out of this rat race of these walls closing in and this extreme pressure that led to these dark fantasies, what would you tell her?
In the wise words of my grandmother, who I loved and still love, she passed, my mom's mom, Grandma Melchuk. She would always tell me, Angie, you need to love yourself more. All growing up, she told me that all the time. You just need to love yourself more.
Wow.
And I would tell myself that. I would, and be like, you know what? Like, for real though, don't just slough it off. Really, really just love yourself more. Because at the end of the day, all you've got is you.
That's right.
And yeah. And it doesn't matter if your hair looks good or you're in matching socks or whatever. Just allow yourself to have that grace of loving yourself and knowing that you're fine.
Right.
And if you're not fine, have a good night's sleep and you'll feel a lot better the next day.
Totally.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then on a side note, just as a little joke, I would also tell her, no, you don't need to get 4 more degrees and kill yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you're still not going to feel smart enough.
Right. Fair enough. Now, I'm thinking back to when you said, it's a lot of pressure when people say that, you had a call with me and you changed my life. But, I will reiterate that person again and say that I think that someone listening to this podcast is going to feel a life change, because I know I myself am realizing how much pressure I put on myself. And so you are changing lives already. So thank you. Yeah, no, it's such a powerful share. I truly believe that there's going to be so much volume from my listeners, who are going to say to themselves, like, what I put this kind of pressure on myself too, and take a minute to look in the mirror and realize that, like, we're all just doing our very best with what we have. And the theme of I am not enough is rampant and poison.
It is.
And it's everywhere.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It's too bad. And it comes in all different forms.
Mm-hmm.
But it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. Amazing. Okay. Well, any final thoughts here? I'm just checking my questions. No, I think I got them. Any final thoughts here?
Just love yourself more.
Beautiful. I think it's great. That's such a great way to end. Thank you so much, Angela, for being on the podcast and for being so raw and real, telling this story for the first time ever. So congratulations on that. And, and you know what? Maybe not again, maybe again. Both are fine.
Yes, I didn't even cry. I thought I was going to cry, but I didn't.
Yeah, well, you rocked it, and you would have been rocked. You would have rocked it crying. You would have rocked it not crying. You did great.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved this last episode, then consider rating the podcast. Those few seconds that it takes makes a huge difference. Also, if you are interested in mentorship, transformational programs, or reading the book Unbroken, Rising Above, Thriving Within, then take a look at the show notes for all the resources and links. Always remember, you can overcome any obstacle. Let's do this together.